Okay, boys and girls, thank you for joining us once again. Si's with me again for his second ride on the Nutrition Science Watchdog ride of fun and frivolity. This video is Si's idea, so I'll let him kind of introduce it a bit. We're going to deal with another YouTuber who is one of these people that likes to run around and make all sorts of assertions about what the science tells us about human nutrition and stuff. He's some kind of vegan or something. So tell us a bit about this guy.
Okay, yeah, so I found Dr. Gil Carvalho on YouTube a while ago, and I just noticed that he had this video that was titled something like "A Scientist Shares Nutrition Knowledge," something like that.
Yep.
And so I decided I saw that it said meat, vegan, what's best or something on the thumbnail, and I proceeded to listen to it. And as I was listening to it, I realized he reminded me of me in the past when I used to think that I knew something as a vegan because of what I had heard from the media and other people regarding eating a lot of plants and fruits was supposed to be really healthy. Yeah. So as I was listening to him, I realized that a lot of the things that he was saying were really controversial, and especially it made me wonder if he was even vegan, because to be preaching a vegan diet or saying that you can be perfectly healthy on a vegan diet would be it would be misleading to say if you were not vegan yourself, first of all. Right. And second of all, I did ask him if he was vegan through a comment, and he said something along the lines that he didn't like to be labeled as a vegan, but that he did eat like that. So that's kind of where I wanted to call you. I think I actually, in my description of my video, said, does Bart Kay or Shawn Baker want to comment on this, just to see kind of how you would present yourself with his arguments for what he's trying to promote.
So, of course, I'd already seen that particular video. I'd watched it once or twice and thought, oh, yeah, here's another one of these guys that wants to be very, very sure of himself and say, you know, this is an absolute fact and that's an absolute fact. I never got around to doing one of my usual rebuttals to this guy. But I knew Si, and Si commented on it, so I dropped a comment under Si saying, we'll come back on my channel and we'll deal with it there. And Si said, okay, so here we are doing it. So do you want to crank through the video and just pause at those timestamps that you've given me, Si, and then we'll just make commentary at those points, or how do you want to do it? Okay.
That sounds perfect to me. Let's go ahead and do that.
All right, let me see if I can share this here screen. Okay, so presumably now you can see my screen, Si?
And I can see your screen, yes. And it looks like it's pulling up the video right now.
All right. What I can't see on this screen is the list of timestamps. So if you just shout out to pause whenever you want, Si, and we'll pause there, then you can make commentary and I'll add anything that, you know, we'll do it like a discussion sort of thing, yeah?
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. That sounds perfect.
Okay. Cool.
All right.
This week we're going to tackle some common questions that just keep coming up over and over again. So let's try to get some actual answers.
Oh, good idea.
Vámonos. It's a very common idea. Seems like there's a study out there for every possible position. So I guess every opinion's worth the same and everything's meaningless, so I'll just eat whatever I want.
Yeah, I wish that was true. What do you think about that one, Si?
Yeah, definitely question that for sure.
Yeah, no, not everybody's opinion is worth the same in terms of the veracity and correctness of ideas that they're putting forward. For those that are still confused or not sure who to believe or who to listen to, I guess what I'm saying is the people who are quite so sure of themselves and who are quite so, this is an absolute fact and don't you dare question it and stuff, they're the people you don't want to listen to. The people who are telling you that the science is in an appalling state, actually, and the level of unsurety that we've got is incredible, they're the people who probably know what's going on. So
I would agree with that.
Of course, that's based on a misunderstanding. Nutrition science is not decided by individual studies in a vacuum. I actually just recorded a podcast where I discussed this exact topic with the host at length. So I'll add a link to the description below if you want to check it out.
It's funny how he's talking about, individual studies don't settle nutrition science in a vacuum. But what he's failed to say is that there are no experimental science studies available in nutrition to even start building a castle.
Right, because there's nothing that is doing enough controls, right, to test what they're actually saying that they're showing you the results of.
Exactly right. So every study is designed by its authors to make an inference of some kind. None of the studies that have been completed in the science today, none of them are adequately controlled experimental interventional science studies. They're all associative things. They're epidemiology, they are cohort studies, they are retrospective outcome type works without control. And then they'll say, oh yes, we control because we control post hoc after the fact mathematically, which is a complete fallacy. I've covered that at length on my channel. You cannot determine what the level of influence any one given uncontrolled variable has had on a mixed outcome once it's mixed. There's no way of doing it. They'll tell you there is. It's basically a lie. I've covered it at some length on my channel by way of saying that a million times, and I'm working on the video that I'm going to post in the next week or so that actually explains all of the mathematics for that. So yeah, sorry about that. Let's move on.
The bottom line is we got to look at all the evidence.
Yeah, which there isn't any of.
We call the preponderance of the evidence in nerd speak.
Yeah, you call it preponderance, I call it a load of rubbish.
To be able to see the trends, to see where the arrows are generally pointing to. That's how the experts come up with the guidelines. They have to go over hundreds, thousands of studies. They don't pluck out one study randomly from the literature and then they all disagree and they all battle to the death or something.
No, the guidelines are set by a panel, and here's how the panel is personed. One person who is deemed by someone to be an expert for whatever reason is asked to chair it, and that person fills the panel with his or her mates who will all come and agree with them.
Okay, so it's completely biased for the most part when somebody does one of these kinds of...
Yeah, and it's absolutely arbitrary because Gil's talking about how they're looking at all the studies. Again, there aren't any studies.
Right.
By studies, I mean experimental science. There is none of it. It's all guesswork. It's all inferences from associations, which are not causal, which are not adequately controlled, which are prone to making errors on the basis of people inappropriately view anything published in a journal as science, when most of it is not, I guess.
Right, and a lot of people just giving their own idea of what they did when they're not really even sure of how much of a percentage of what they ate or...
Yeah, a lot of these things are based, like on the nutrition field, a lot of these epidemiology studies are based on self-reporting by the participants, by the subjects. We know it's vastly inaccurate. Not only do they make mistakes, people tell lies with malice aforethought about what they've been eating. And they even do it when they think it's for important research. And there's been research done to establish that people are told this is a very vital piece of research you're involved in here. This will inform public health initiatives. You must tell us the truth. And they've checked and people have lied. So here we go.
Interesting.
Although that would be a lot more fun to watch. If this is a little confusing, if it's not quite making sense, here's an example. During the 20th century, when scientists were studying tobacco and lung cancer...
So this is the thing that the vegans do every time, Si. They always draw a comparison between epidemiology in nutrition with epidemiology in the area of cancer, lung cancer specifically, and cigarette smoking or tobacco smoking. It's a completely inappropriate analogy. The effect size, the change in incidence between smokers of tobacco and non-smokers of tobacco in terms of incident cases of lung cancer are like 18, 20, 21 upwards times the incidence. So for every one over here, there's more than 20 over here in the smokers group. Okay, so
yeah,
that's not a causal thing. That is an association. But I'll tell you what, if you've got a group of non-smokers with a very low rate of lung cancer, and you've got a group of smokers with 20 times the lung cancer, I'm going to pay attention to that association and go, you know what? That's probably worth paying some attention to.
Right, because of the significance of the 20
Because of
times.
the effective size. This is a massive change in outcome for people. A real change in outcome, yeah? 20 times over.
Yes.
The epidemiology studies that talk about heart disease and diet and fats and cholesterol and all this stuff, that's also associative. It's not causal. But I dismiss that stuff completely out of hand, because when you actually go through and do the math on these studies and go, what was your absolute outcome statistic here? What we normally get, invariably, is somewhere between 1 and 5 incident cases per 1,000 person years of follow-up in these studies for nutrition.
So it's less than 1%, basically.
It's
If I'm doing my math right.
yeah, it's 5,000ths basically. So 0.5, and some of them are in the tens of thousands, and some of them are in the hundreds of thousands, per person per year. So if you take a person and you nominally allow them a 100-year lifespan, if you had a change of 1 in 1,000 per person per year, in 100 years, what is the percentage change in risk for that person to develop that disease? And it's not even risk, because we haven't established any causal artifact. We've just said these two things are associated at large in the population. In actual fact, the thing that's been spoken about in these very small effect size epidemiology studies might have no impact at all, let alone even a very tiny one. So that's why the smoking analogy is completely inappropriate. It's nonsense. Okay, something that makes something happen 20 times more often is useful, is worth knowing
that makes
about.
sense. Definitely not a good comparison to something that happens
once in the tens of thousands. No, exactly. So that's just nonsense. So anytime a vegetarian says to you, oh, but smoking though, in epidemiology, and so smoking doesn't cause lung cancer, then is what they say, to which you can say, well, actually there's no proof of causality. It is an association that has been shown between smoking and heart disease, smoking and lung cancer, but it's a massive one. It's a really strong association. It's a big one. Your association with fat and heart disease is nothing. That's the difference. Okay, let's not labor that too much.
But that makes sense, though.
Cancer, the vast majority of studies showed a link, but a couple didn't. So does that mean that tobacco and lung cancer is still a controversial topic?
No, not really. Not really, Gil, and I don't think anyone's saying that. Anyone with any sense, anyway.
That any opinion's valid? No.
No, not any opinion's valid. And the opinion that is invalid is the opinion of the person who puts forward something that happens in the thousands, tens, and hundreds of thousands per person per year as being analogous to something that happens 20 times more often. That's the person whose opinion you need to ignore. Gil.
Point.
It means that when you run 1,000 studies, some are not going to be statistically significant. That's just inherent to the variability. Maybe they didn't have enough people, maybe they didn't follow them long enough. There's 1,000 explanations. The bottom line is we need to look at all the evidence to be able to see the trends, not pluck out one observation and extrapolate. Make sense? Next. If we go by media headlines, it does look like that sometimes. But that's how they get their clicks. If the headline was, scientists agree broccoli is a really healthy food, nobody's reading that. It's not surprising. So
Well, it would be surprising because broccoli is nothing of the sort. In fact, actually, No. No. Oh, dear.
Newsmakers have to look for shock value. Cancer.
Yeah, absolutely they do. And what Gil is saying there is right, that the media, the shock jockeys, the vox pop people will be as extremist as they can, will be as inflammatory as they can with the verbiage in their headlines. They will completely misrepresent what science, even any individual science study published this week says, or whatever else.
Right, just to get clicks.
The attitude of scientists themselves, the people in science, that actually changes glacially. In fact, my professor, when I was training, said to me that science progresses one funeral at a time. And it makes sense, because as an academic, you plant your flag somewhere in the ground, you say, this is my belief structure, and you start publishing papers that are supporting that idea.
Right.
It's very, very difficult to change stream halfway through your career and say, I was wrong. In fact, almost no academic has the balls to do it. The one exception I can think of is Tim Noakes. But he was like massively world renowned. So he thought, I can afford this, actually. I'm still going to be Tim Noakes. I'm just going to say, hey, by the way, everything I've been saying for the last 30 years about how you should carb up and how carbs are absolutely vital and you can't do stuff without carbs, I was wrong. Yes, you were wrong, Tim. But nobody else is doing that. Everyone is saying, they're taking a position on one side of this divide, this encampment, and they're entrenching themselves there for their entire lives. So
I see that.
That's an issue, is what I'm saying.
Cancer linked to Brussels sprouts. Your coffee.
Sorry, you wanted to say something, sir?
Oh, no, truly, definitely. I see it even just in the vegan community, and people change, but they don't even want to acknowledge that they changed. A lot of times we'll just say that this is what they've always believed after, if they go as far as to make a change. And of course, there's some that basically have enough respect for themselves and others to tell, okay, yeah, I was wrong. But just in that community, I think a lot of people are stuck because they've been telling people, and they've made books around it and courses, and have an audience of people, and they're just afraid.
It always amazes me, just before we do move on, that the number of times you look at an adult vegan male and you see this lack of breadth across the shoulder, you see thin skull laterally side to side instead of a rounded skull. They're thin and skinny. You see skinny neck. You see basically everything that we're seeing here to some degree or another. And these are people who are sitting there saying, here is a diet and a lifestyle that's nutritionally complete. I don't understand. Anyway.
I hear that. It is kind of ironic to see how many people shrink on a vegan diet and do have those kind of stereotypical changes. And they still want to believe so bad that what they're doing is good for them, that they blindly keep doing it, and usually suffer as a result.
A lot of people don't understand or realize that skeletal structures, your bones, are not set shape and size. You think, okay, you grow, there are growth plates, your bones grow via the growth plates. When you've reached your adult height, your growth plates fuse, that's the end of your growing. Your bones are now set for shape and size. No. You are able to absorb bone tissue, lay down extra bone tissue. In fact, a classic example of that is you break a bone, it heals because it lays down new tissue, and it actually repairs the site of the fracture slightly thicker and stronger and harder than it was. So if you re-break that bone, it's very likely that you'll break it close to the original break, but not on the original break. Again.
Okay, that makes sense, because it's stronger and thicker where the break was.
Exactly, right. So if you eat a diet which encourages you to lay down heavy, solid bone structures, you will, i.e. a nutritionally complete diet. Or if you eat a diet that's devoid of some of the things you need to achieve that, then your body will start to dissolve your skeleton away, and you will start to turn into like what what Gil looks like here, and what guys like Chris Branchier look like, and what, you know, guys like Goji Boy look like, and all these characters that you look at. The only exceptions I see in the vegan community are guys who are taking steroids, like Paul Curtin.
I would have to look him up. I'm not.
Paul Curtin is otherwise known as Hench Herbivore.
Oh, of course. Then yes, definitely know who that is.
Yeah,
and he seems to be on. He definitely seems to be on something for sure.
Oh, he said so publicly more than once.
Okay, so
he is a known steroid abuser. So everything he says about his physique and everything down to his diet, he's lying. He's a steroid abuser.
Definitely. You can't tell people that your diet is what's getting you the results if you're doing that, for sure.
Correct. It's a confounding variable, isn't it? If you think about the whole thing scientifically, if you're going to say my diet is the cause of my fitness and physique, then you need to not take steroids to establish that fact, don't you?
Agreed, 100%.
Right. So anyway, let's not get too bogged down. This is fun, though, isn't it?
Yes.
I've never done teaming up before. This is good fun.
They may be giving you Alzheimer's, or their absolute favorite. New study shows everything you thought you knew about X is wrong. That's not science.
No, and neither is epidemiology.
That's salesmanship.
Yes, and so is epidemiology.
The flashy headline, that's what spreads like wildfire.
Yep.
The correction, the nuance, the clarification, nobody cares. So the truth is, nutrition experts are in agreement on 95%, and nutrition advice doesn't change that much. A little bit here and there as we learn more, but not fundamentally. The fundamentals have been essentially the same for years, and actually a lot of it for decades.
Yeah, and it's been wrong for decades, the fundamentals that are being taught. That's what the problem is. That's why I say this is a problem that science only progresses one funeral at a time, because there are still people running around today training the new generation of kids who are getting their degrees together now and teaching them the same ridiculous nonsense that was wrong back then, has been wrong ever since, and is still wrong now. It's disgraceful. And he was talking about nutrition experts. There's no such thing. How can you have a nutrition expert when you have no science on which to base expertise? Science is experimental and it's controlled. There isn't any of it. Please explain that one to me. Somebody.
It seems like they're not listening.
Oh, here we go. This will be fun.
Saturated fat raises our cholesterol levels and our risk of heart disease.
No, completely wrong. False. Absolutely false from the ground up. Absolutely not. There are no experimental studies to support that claim. There are only epidemiology studies available, and they don't even show a convincing association, let alone causality. So any academic, this guy is both an academic and a medical doctor, by the way. He's got an MD and a PhD, and he's just abandoned science entirely right there in that sentence.
Right, that's one of the questions that I had is this true? Because he says it's an established fact that it raises the risk of heart disease, but that's not.
That is an absolute fallacy there from Gil. He is either completely in error, in which case he is incompetent and should return his PhD and also his MD and should shut down his channel and never make another public statement again, or he's not incompetent and he knows that he's lying, in which case that's lying to the public with malice aforethought, which would be misconduct of the highest order, which should result in him shutting his channel down and never making another public statement. Yeah.
Yeah. My thought is that he is ignorant of what he's saying. That he hasn't looked into the other side. Yeah.
It's incompetence, I think. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's not an evil man with malice aforethought. I'm going to say Gil is incompetent. Anyone who says that it is an established fact that cholesterol has any causal effect on heart disease is incompetent, because it simply isn't so. I've covered that at real depth on my channel, so I won't go over it again today, Sire, but people can watch my playlist. It's called cholesterol videos or something like that, actually. There's about 35 different videos there. There's many, many hours of very good science-based information there that you can learn all about it and why it is exactly how it is that these clowns have got this so badly wrong, basically. So that's probably well worth people going and have a look at that rather than taking my word for it, because you shouldn't take anybody's word for anything. You should always go and fact check everything that is said to you. So
definitely. Yeah. I know your channel has a lot of good information, and then you have the Patreon too, which even gives more in-depth information.
That's right. Yes. So folks are cordially invited, really, to support both the YouTube channel and the Patreon thing. I also offer consultancy as well for what I believe to be incredibly reasonable rates. So yeah, that's all there for you if you're interested in that. Anyway, let's go and see what else Gil has to say about cholesterol, because he's started out on utterly the wrong side of the ledger. He's made complete ass of himself. His statement there is completely false from the ground up. So let's see if he's going to back it up with anything at all, and if so, what?
That's established, and I've made videos covering that in detail.
Yeah, so have I. I've made videos covering that in detail, and it is absolutely not established. So, which is it? Is this man evil or is he incompetent?
Now, a few years...
So he's not going to back it up with anything except I've made some videos, which we'd have to go and look. Okay, I've done the same thing, to be fair. I've said go and look at my videos. I would challenge anyone to go and look at my videos, and also go and look at Gil's and see who you want to believe, really. It's up to you.
I hear that.
I believe that in my videos over many, many hours, and there's, like, as I said, more than 30 of them, which cover this from all sorts of different angles, I believe I've laid out the science. I believe I've shown the exact flaws in the mathematics and the exact statistical inference errors that have been made. I think I've been very, very clear as to exactly how it is that the wool has been pulled over people's eyes. And I believe, without having done so, that if someone that goes and watches Gil's videos is probably going to see someone who is spouting dogma and splashing papers up on the screen for 3 seconds without analysing them at all, or doing any of the statistical looking into what is being said or any of it. That's where my bottom dollar would be. Anyway, let's crack on.
All right.
Years ago, a couple of studies came out that claimed saturated fat made no difference. Obviously, the media jumped all over it, and that created a lot of confusion.
Yeah, a couple of studies were some major, massive, multi-million person year association studies. Epidemiology is what he's talking about. Yeah, not just a couple of studies, Gil. Okay. Wow. So that's just a complete misrepresentation of what was put down in those epidemiology studies, in those meta-analyses. They showed
he's cherry picking.
Yeah, he is. He's absolutely cherry picking. He said, "Oh, there's only a couple of studies that say no." Yeah, but the studies that say no, Gil, are the massive meta-analyses of all the studies that say the relative risk, even though it's not a risk, it's an association. The relative association is 1.0, which means there's no difference between people who eat a lot of saturated fat and people who eat very little. As in, you know, there wasn't even, I mean, there might have been a statistically significant difference between the groups, but a lot of people don't understand that you can achieve a statistically significant result, which is actually a tiny real effect. And the way you do that is you have a massive, massive sample size.
That makes sense, right? The bigger the sample size, the more difference there's going to be.
However, you take the difference between low saturated fat eaters and high saturated fat eaters in terms of their heart disease outcomes, and you apply that difference to any one person over a 100-year lifespan, as I was talking about before, and it makes no difference to them. So if you're holding a public purse string and saying, okay, we've got these millions and millions of person user follow-up, there is an association here, it's tiny, but it equates to, let's say, a difference of 2,000 or 3,000 deaths. If you're the holder of a public purse who is stupid enough to ascribe causality to an association and think that's a good way to spend your money, that's the use of epidemiology. It's a misuse because it's associative and not causal, but that's what it's for. It's not to tell any one given individual, should you eat saturated fat or not, because it's completely unable to detect any difference, because there isn't any for any one given person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So basically, or if I eat a lot of saturated fat in my lifetime, say maybe I eat 100% more saturated fat than the next person.
Yep.
When we look at our overall mortality, it's going to be very similar. It's not going to make that much of a difference.
What I'm saying is that there is no apparent impact on the mortality rate at all.
All right.
Over a 100-year period. So forget about
Amazing.
it.
It's amazing that a misconception is out there from so many people because of what has kind of been publicized.
This is the only way that epidemiologists in the area of physiology and health and nutrition and all of that, this is the only way they can get anything published, is by being alarmists and by talking about their outcome statistics as relative factors rather than as absolute results, and saying things like, I mean, I did one a few weeks ago on breast cancer incidence and the consumption of milk. And it turns out they was talking about 150% change in risk, which is an absolute change. But the original risk is very, very low. So 150% of almost nothing is still almost nothing. And we did the math in that video, and that was an example of a difference that was in the tenths of thousandths per woman per year. So absolutely meaningless. But that study gets published because it says 150% change in risk for breast cancer. No, it's a lie. It's complete misdirect in order to get something published and to be an important scientist. No, you're a charlatan epidemiologist. It's not science at all. It's absolute skullduggery, spin doctory, and nonsense of the highest order. They should be publicly whipped and flogged and stuff, I think. Yes. Okay, let's move on.
All right.
Bottom line is saturated fat raises your risk of heart disease, but...
No, it doesn't. No, there's absolutely no evidence for that anywhere in the literature. That is a complete misrepresentation of fact, aka either it's an incompetent statement by a charlatan or it's a lie. I don't care which. It's unacceptable.
It's not the only food that does it.
Go on, sir.
Yeah, I just wonder, with the majority of the people who publish these papers and, you know, who are making these claims so that they can become recognized, do you think they are mostly aware that they're lying or that they're fabricating in a way to get that publicity and that they're misleading people?
I believe the epidemiologists that are doing these studies are doing them with malice aforethought, and I believe they understand completely that their results are meaningless in the real world to anybody. They don't care because that is how they make their living. That is how they justify their existence as a so-called scientist. No, it's disgraceful. And then they publish their results using verbiage that is meant to put up smoke and mirrors and confuse even other academics as to what the meaning of the results are in the real universe. And then incompetent crackpots like this guy here come online and start saying, this is a fact, we've shown absolutely that cholesterol causes heart disease risk to increase, which is completely false. There is no evidence for that anywhere. That's a lie. There's never been any evidence for that. That's a made-up pseudo-fact.
So it depends what you replace it with. If you lower your saturated fat and you eat more fruits and vegetables, yeah, your risk of heart disease is going to come down.
There's no evidence for that either, Gil. That's another statement made with confidence and arrogance about what are the facts. Point to a single properly controlled experimental study conducted using human beings as subjects, and I'll be interested to hear about your nutrition science then, Gil. Until then, no, son. There's no evidence for what you're saying at all. Is this making sense, Si? The position I'm taking here?
Oh yeah, definitely, and especially with the confidence that he says these things. Like you said, there's an arrogance to it to say these things as if you know for 100% certainty that
yes,
reality.
And to dismiss any possibility or any likelihood of anyone like myself coming along, which is not going to work because I will not be silenced, and trying to stop these people from saying, hang on a minute, Show me your evidence for the statement of fact that you've been spouting as a nutritional science fraternity for the last 80 years. Well, let's have a look at public health, shall we, over the last 80 years and see how good it's been for us, the advice of these organizations that say, you know, avoid saturated fat, avoid red meat especially, eat lots of healthy whole grains and legumes and fruit and vegetables and stuff. How's our health statistics going, Si, do you think, in the last 80 years?
More diabetes. Seems like heart disease has not gotten any better.
Yeah.
Is it worse now?
Yes, it's a lot worse. You know, cancer, heart disease, if we didn't mention that one already, obesity, diabetes. Yeah. Okay.
And we can see, even in just the plant-based, or what I would actually consider the vegan community, because I don't really even think plant-based is as much as of a real thing. But the vegan community, you can actually see the changes in the people. And I think that they're often going into this believing that they are going to become more healthy. They're going to become more youthful. They're going to become almost like a superhuman. And over time, you do see the changes, and it kind of seems almost like it's the opposite.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you even look at Gil's hands on the screen. He has feminine hand shape. It's oblong. It's not square. The male palm should be square. His is oblong. His fingers are slender and long and thin in the female style. This whole skeletal structure, as I've said, has feminized. In the time I can definitely see what you're saying. And one of the things that I noticed as a vegan that kind of can attest to this, and there are old videos of me when I was really into being vegan, although I wasn't saying it was the most healthy diet, I believed that it could be. I definitely got much thinner, but before I got bigger, actually, because at some point it changed and I got bigger, but not in a way that was muscular, more like at lots of extra fat around my body. Yeah. And probably on the inside too. Yeah. But I did become more like Gil over time, and people noticed it, and they said things to me, but I always thought, you know, I'm being so healthy that this must be what health looks like. Yeah. Oh, well, if that's what health looks like, I think you can keep it, Si. Anyway, shall we?
But if you swap your saturated fat for Twinkies, you're not going to see a benefit.
Yeah, he's probably right, but there is no science to back it up, is what I'm saying. It's all speculation. Some of the inferences we have are quite good. Some of them are really, really poor. The difference is being discerning enough to know the difference, I guess.
They're both bad. So any study that doesn't make that distinction and just lumps everything together can be misleading. When that distinction is made, the difference is clear. So bottom line is, we do want to go easy on the saturated fat.
No, we don't want to go easy on the saturated fat, Gil. There's no evidence in support of that. That's a very, very bad idea, because what most people are going to do is replace that with one of polyunsaturated fats, because that's what the Heart Foundation tells you is good for your heart, and or yet more carbohydrates, and let's go with grains because they're healthy as well. If you were to swap saturated fat out for either carbohydrates or polyunsaturates or a mixture of both, that is almost certain to reduce your health. Again, we don't have the experimental studies to back that up, but what we can do is go to the mechanistic speculations and go, okay, here's what happens. And now let's look for it and see if the expectation is borne out in an observation of people anecdotally. Guess what? Yep. Every time you get polyunsaturates and carbohydrates out of someone's diet, their health improves. We have no negative reports from tens of thousands of people who have listened to what we have to say here in the carnivore community and gone, that makes sense, and done it.
Right, and there's lots of anecdotal evidence, meaning like just countless amounts of people who have changed their diet in that way and have had pretty astounding results, and that's something that we're starting to see a lot of now. Yeah,
and on the flip side of that, okay, like anything, when you're reading anecdotes, you need to be balanced. So you need to look for the negative ones as well. You need to look for people that say, oh no, look, it was terrible for me. There aren't any. I challenge people to go. You might find one comedy video by Vegetable Police or something like that. Okay,
Right.
Anyone that takes Vegetable Police seriously as a commentator on nutrition deserves what they get. The boy's a comedian. Okay, so what I mean is, if you can seriously find me any remotely reliable reports from any individuals anywhere in the world who have gone carnivore, got the carbohydrates and oils and things out of their diet, that has had a negative outcome from that, I'll be interested to see it, because they're just not there. So that's got to tell us something. I mean, if you did the same thing looking at a vegan diet, and have a look at, is there anyone saying anything negative about the vegan diet on anecdotes on the internet? Wow, that'll be a different story, won't it, Si?
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Oh, yes. 84% of people who go vegan quit within 5 years, and 90% of those people say it's because my health catastrophically failed, usually because of nutritional deficiencies on the completely insufficient vegan diet. Okay, let's go.
But we want to replace it with healthy food, not other bad stuff. Make sense?
Yeah, but we don't know what healthy food is, Gil, because we're being told that healthy food is plants, leafy greens sort of thing, fruits, healthy whole grains, seed oils are good for us according to the Heart Foundation, and all the things that we've eaten for the last 350,000 years that we've evolved on, and that we are absolutely highly tuned to consume. Other things we should avoid now because suddenly we know better than nature. Really.
That's where it's there. We've been led.
Yep. So that's where we're at with that one. So this is why people like Gil really need to not make these videos, because he absolutely, as I say, does not know what he's talking about at all, or is an absolute evil lying piece of shit. I don't care which one it is. Both of those are reasons for him to stop permanently.
Next. There's nothing special about eggs.
There is.
Nothing fundamentally different. They're an animal source food, so they're going to be relatively high in cholesterol and saturated fat.
Great. That's what we're evolved for. That's what we need.
Now, there's nothing in eggs that we can't get somewhere else, so we definitely don't need them. But that fact alone doesn't necessarily tell us that they're bad. So,
Well, he's got something right.
are they good or bad? Well, it depends what you compare them to. It's just like saturated fat. They're not the healthiest food out there by any stretch of the imagination. They're not the best breakfast option, but they're...
That's complete speculation. Again, there is absolutely no science here. Why would you say this is a fact? This is a fact when you have absolutely no empirical data to support that fact with. It's crazy.
They're also not the worst. So if we're talking...
Sorry.
Yeah, well, what he's going to say now is what I kind of wanted to comment on too. So yeah, let's play.
Okay.
Oatmeal and fruit, yeah, that's going to be more health promoting. But if we're talking sausage and bacon, you're probably better off eating your eggs, to be honest.
Okay, so he's saying that oatmeal and fruit is better than eggs, based on what? Absolutely no evidence of any kind whatsoever, because there are no experimental studies on human beings in existence.
And on that note, I hear a lot of people quoting things, and I don't know where this information comes from exactly, but they're saying things like, "Oh, eating eggs is worse for your health than cigarettes." What do you know about that?
Well, that's absolutely ridiculous. That's not even worth giving the time of day to. Si, that is one of the most ridiculous things I have ever heard.
And for me, it is ridiculous for sure too. I mean, to me, there's no comparison, but just based upon the way that one would make you feel compared to the other one.
Yeah. What we would need an epidemiology study that said that people who ate eggs were more than 20 times more likely to die than people who didn't, before you could even start comparing it to cigarette smoking, wouldn't you?
Right, and it doesn't
there
make
isn't
sense.
Such a study. So,
but for whatever reason, there are vegans. I mean, and surprisingly, some of the more well-known ones that are saying this exact thing. And
that's because they are evil pieces of shit. These vegan doctors and such, and vegan influencers. Make no mistake, Si, these are evil people who are pushing an evil, poisonous ideology And that is their entire raison d'etre. That is their entire way they make their money, most of them. Because any of these guys that were actually still practicing medicine would be shut down. They would lose their medical license for saying to people the shit that they are saying online. That's why none of them are doing it. They're all private.
I can imagine that's true.
Yeah. There is not even the evil organizations who have got it wrong for the last 80 years, not even those organizations will sit there and allow a medical doctor to tell a patient that the vegan diet is the best way to go without there being ramifications for that, because it simply isn't true. And nobody in the world, except people who have bought into the vegan ideology, sucked that lollipop even for a second.
I'm sure you're right about that.
Because it's just fundamentally the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
It's ironic how when I was a kid, I'm 49 years old, so whenever I was growing up, for somebody to be a vegan or a vegetarian even was a very strange thing. Almost nobody. I mean, I knew one person that was a vegetarian as I was growing up.
Yeah.
And now we're almost expected to believe from these people that this is what was normal and natural, and that and like they can't even understand why people would eat animal foods. And that's kind of an irony to me, that everybody kind of grew up they grew up eating animal foods, and now they've kind of let themselves to be programmed in this way to believe that that's unnatural.
Yeah. So how we get around that, really, for me, it's combating at the coalface. In other words, commenting on these vegetard videos as often and as strongly as I possibly can and have the energy to do, because if I save one mind, one soul who's sitting on the fence thinking, is this veganism thing a good idea after all, because these doctors are telling me it is, if one of those people sees one of my videos and goes, I understand, crackpottery of the highest order, veganism will kill me, not a good idea, I need to get out of that, and etc., then it's worth it. That's why I do what I do. Once someone has bought into the ideology fully, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to crack them out of it. They have to crack out of it themselves, and usually what has to happen for that to occur is their health has to catastrophically fail, unfortunately. Now, I wish it was the other way around. I wish people would listen to me before going vegan and not do it, obviously. Having done it, though, and having had their health completely fail them, that's when they're now coming back to us and going, okay, now we understand. We understand what the folly was. So there are kind of two groups of people that we are actually winning over. The people that we're not winning over, the people that we're not going to have any impact on, are those people who have religiously, ideologically, absolutely sucked that lollipop and bought that whole bill of goods. They believe it, and they will defend it. Most of them will defend it almost to the death.
That is true.
That's what's happening.
People.
Yeah. Anyway, we better let Gil say some more things so we can get through this, hadn't we?
All right.
The frequency also plays an important role. If you eat eggs once or twice a month, that's not going to be a big deal physiologically, because your body has time to rectify.
Rectify the damage done by the eggs, is it, Gil? Fuck off, son. Jesus, come on.
The peak of cholesterol and whatever else goes up.
Cholesterol is not a health concern, Gil.
But if you eat eggs 3 times a day, that's a whole different story.
No, it isn't.
So everything in nutrition is relative. It depends on your goals and your risk tolerance. Everything in nutrition is relative, including your outcome statistics, Gil, which is completely inappropriate, isn't it, son? Yes, it is. Shall we move on? Yes, they do, and that's fine. The short answer is yes.
He's got that right. Yes, they do, and that is fine. There is no problem with elevated cholesterol so long as you don't have the 1 in a million genetic knockout that means that you can't absorb cholesterol from the bloodstream, in which case you'd know about it because you would have been diagnosed as a very young child, and secondly, you'd know about it because you're probably dead, because you probably didn't live past about 10, not because you had high cholesterol in your blood, but because you couldn't actually absorb any cholesterol out of your blood into your cells where it was needed to do things like, make cell membranes. And so your body fell to bits and you died. Make sense? Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Studies have clearly shown that effect, but the exact magnitude, the exact size of the effect varies from person to person, just like anything else.
Yeah, and it's completely irrelevant because cholesterol is not a health concern of any kind.
Now, there are some studies out there funded by the egg industry that have a lot of people.
Oh, there you go. Egg industry funding is a problem here, not the fact that Gil is relying on pseudoscience, spin doctory, and basically lies. Okay.
People confused. One trick they use is they look at people who already have very high blood cholesterol levels from the get-go. So adding one more extra egg on top doesn't make much of a difference. This led to this general idea you see sometimes out there in the blogosphere that the cholesterol you eat...
So you see how he's still talking under the assumption we're expected to just accept it, that cholesterol is somehow a problem. Well, show me a single study that supports that hypothesis. There isn't one in existence anywhere. So this is just misdirect. This is the tool. These are the tools that these people are using to fool people. They are obfuscating their responsibility as scientists to talk about what the relevant scientific facts are here. And the relevant scientific facts when we're talking about cholesterol are these. Without it, you will die. If it is limited below what it should be, you will suffer. Your genes control what the level of cholesterol in your blood is. And cholesterol does not cause heart disease. There is no evidence that it does anywhere. Those are the facts. Anyone who says anything else is smoking, mirroring, obfuscating, lying to you about what the science tells us, unfortunately. And they are people that you need to not listen to from that point on. As soon as someone says cholesterol, high cholesterol is a concern, you need to shut that person down and say, I'm not listening to you anymore because you are not a scientist.
Eat has nothing to do with...
Yeah, he's about to say something about that I wanted to comment on too.
Okay, let's go.
Your blood cholesterol levels. That's smoke and mirrors. Eating cholesterol raises your blood cholesterol up to a high level where it starts to plateau, it starts to level off. But you don't want to be in those ranges anyway.
Why not?
Now that was one of the questions that I had, because I do believe, I mean, I've kind of seen the evidence from my own self and heard from other people, and I think that you also agreed with it. Eggs will raise your cholesterol levels.
Yes.
If you, for example, if you're a vegan and you eat eggs, it's going to raise your cholesterol levels.
Yes.
But, and maybe up to a higher level, where it's kind of like what the norm is for people who eat animals versus people who don't eat animal foods.
Yeah, which frankly would be a fantastic thing if every vegan would understand that if they ate a couple of eggs a day, that would normalize their cholesterol and probably normalize their health largely, because that's probably one of the biggest flaws that vegans have with their nutrition. Yeah. That would probably normalize their cholesterol.
And so speaking a little bit more to that, which makes sense to me, and I mean, anecdotally, I definitely feel better with my cholesterol higher than it was. And there's more to that. I don't know if I might have that in the later part of the video too, about whether HDL or any of these ratios make a difference.
Yeah.
But HDL also went up, and it was a more favorable result overall.
Yeah.
But I think that what a lot of people are seeing, for example, from videos like Game Changers and all of this, that, oh yeah, these people, they go onto a so-called plant-based diet and then their cholesterol level drops, which doesn't necessarily mean that they're healthy.
No, that's catastrophic, actually, Si. It's an absolute sign of catastrophic health failure has begun. Yeah.
And it's because we actually really do need that exogenous or outside form of cholesterol in order to keep our cholesterol levels at a place where it's actually healthy?
Yes, yeah. So our genes will work very hard to maintain our genetic set point for cholesterol in our blood. If you eat too much cholesterol, you will basically crap out the excess in your feces.
Okay.
If you eat not enough, your body will upregulate its endogenous production of cholesterol. 80% of the cholesterol in your body is made by the body from non-cholesterol sources, actually. However, the production of cholesterol from non-cholesterol sources comes at the cost of other nutrient. Because instead of oxidizing acetyl coenzyme A for energy, you now have to send it back through the metabolic pathway in a build-up procedure to build cholesterol from that acetyl coenzyme A start point.
So it's kind of like losing energy in the whole metabolic cycle in a way.
Correct. Absolutely. Okay. Yes. And given that the amount of energy that vegans are actually effectively able to derive from plant foods, that puts them at a vast energy insufficiency. Even just to maintain a cholesterol level which is already vastly too low, because they are starving themselves of a vital nutrient, cholesterol.
It's very interesting. I think there's going to be some people that are going to, when they listen to this, they're going to, I mean, obviously your audience and some of the people I'm associated with now kind of get that this might be something they were wrong about before, but there's a lot of people hearing this, they're just going to
look. So the other thing that I want to sort of say here, and it may well have been appropriate later in the video, I don't know, but I'll say it now because it's on my mind, and that is that when we're talking about cholesterol in the blood, we're not even talking about cholesterol in the blood. It's what? Okay. What is labeled as cholesterol, what they are actually talking about, the medical profession, the scientists, etc., they are talking about all the blood phospholipoproteins.
Right.
Phospholipoproteins are not cholesterol. They are the wrapping, they are the packaging for cholesterol and everything else that's not water soluble, actually, all the lipids.
Okay.
They're kind of spherical packages of phospholipid membranes with structural proteins that hold them together, and the thing that determines one class from another is the protein. So when we're talking about low density cholesterol, high density cholesterol, it's got nothing to do with cholesterol. Cholesterol is a molecule that has a set structure. You can go and look in a textbook. There aren't different forms of it. That is cholesterol. So good and bad cholesterol? No. Good and bad lipoproteins? Still no, because every single one of them exists because there is a piece of DNA that encodes for its production. That DNA having survived natural selection pressures for 3,800 million years. They all have a purpose. They are all generated by the body when they are needed by the body. The body knows when that is, and it knows how to turn those things on and off. It's been doing it for 3,800 million years.
And
the whole idea that we need to do anything about this is ridiculous. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, I was just wondering too, like, as you'd mentioned that there's other nutrients carried, all of the fat-based vitamins, are they also carried in those lipoproteins?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
So that might, fat solubles. Yep.
So it could be viewed that having more cholesterol is basically more efficiently distributing those nutrients.
Correct. So when they say you eat a lot of saturated fat and your cholesterol goes up, well, of course, because the saturated fat that you've consumed will be absorbed in the form of triacylglycerides, or triglycerides if you like, and triglycerides will not dissolve in the blood because they're fats and not water soluble, so they have to go into phospholipoproteins. As it turns out, in the gut they are put into the very lowest density lipoproteins called chylomicrons, actually, and the chylomicrons are altered by the liver and changed into LDL, the LDL form of the cholesterol lipoprotein complex, and that is what delivers that triglyceride to where it needs to be at various sites around the body. That's its job. How can it be bad? It isn't bad, of course. So why are these idiots saying that cholesterol is a problem in heart disease? Well, only because you will find quite a bit of cholesterol around the lesions of atherosclerosis in patients who have atherosclerosis. Okay? One of the most important things that cholesterol does in the body is it plays a crucial role structurally in maintaining the integrity of cell membranes in every one of the several trillion cells in your body. Okay. Without sufficient cholesterol, you can't have good structurally sound cells. That's not a good thing. That's a dead thing. So that's why you need cholesterol there. Now, if you've got an injury in your vascular epithelial wall inside your blood vessels, you are going to need cholesterol there to repair those cells, aren't you? So that's why it's there. You're also going to find every time there's a forest fire, you're going to find firemen there, aren't you?
Yes.
Does that mean the cause of the forest fire was firemen?
No.
No. That's all we've got here in the cholesterol hypothesis. There is no science any better than that. It's a complete have. It's a complete sham. Nobody has ever provided a remotely feasible mechanism by which cholesterol could possibly cause heart disease. The process of heart disease is an inflammatory immune dysfunction. It is not a lipid dysfunction. Anyway, go and watch those videos on my channel all about that and you'll learn all about it.
All
cool.
Right.
Let's crack on a bit.
Okay.
By the way, saturated fat does the exact same thing, but even stronger than dietary cholesterol. So the more saturated fat you eat, the higher your blood cholesterol level, up to that very high range where it starts to level off.
Yeah, because there's a genetic ceiling to it, isn't it? Because your body knows how much it needs, Gil, for goodness sake. Am I the only person on the planet that can do logic?
So the truth is, if you have a cholesterol issue, then cutting back on the...
Nobody has a cholesterol issue unless they are one of those 1 in a million people with that complete genetic knockout. That means they have no cholesterol receptors on their cell membranes. And they usually die before they're about 10 or 12 years old. Other than that, there is nobody with a cholesterol issue. That is a complete misnomer. It's a made-up medical condition. Having high cholesterol, or higher than what is average, is not pathological. It is not a medical condition. It does not need intervention. Goodness.
The eggs and other animal foods that are rich in cholesterol and saturated fat helps.
Yeah, okay, so good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, we've covered it. There is no such thing. They are all there for a reason. So as such, you could say they're all good because they all have a purpose.
Okay.
But you cannot say some of them are good and some of them are bad. Why on earth would we hang on to and keep a length of DNA which has to survive natural selection pressures? Why would we keep that for 3,800 million years if it was going to kill us?
I hear that logic for sure.
Okay, great. Well, that's all we need, I think. Let's move on. This guy pisses me off. Like everybody like him. They are all so arrogant and so sure of themselves about they've got this nailed down and we know all this stuff. And they're just so utterly wrong and ignorant and stupid. And half of them don't even realize that they are giving people advice that is likely to shorten that person's lifespan if they take that advice, and also reduce the quality of life that person has in the interim. It's completely unacceptable behavior, Gil.
The experts are in agreement that...
No, they're not. And by the way, what's an expert? X is an unknown quantity and a spurt, Gil, is a drip under pressure. And I think, that's probably what we're looking at here, frankly. The experts, number one, don't exist, because how can you be an expert in a science that does not exist? There is no empirical evidence to analyze. There are only associations and inferences at varying levels of quality, ranging from piss poor to not really very good at the best. But there is no empirical experimental science which would allow us to make any kind of statement about nutritional science at all. What's good for humans long term, what's good for their health? Speculation.
That raising our HDL, what people call our good cholesterol, doesn't really help, doesn't lower our risk of heart disease.
That's because the phospholipoprotein fractions in the blood have no impact on heart disease at all. None. That's why changing it doesn't help, Gil. So instead of cherry picking the one piece of data there that says, oh, look, there's no difference, why don't you have a look at all the lipoprotein fractions, including the data that exists such that it does on LDL, and you'll find that there is no association with heart disease. The relative risk factor is 1.0, which means there's no change.
I've made videos on this before going over the details. So a food that raises both your bad cholesterol,
No such thing.
your LDL, and your good
No such thing.
cholesterol, your HDL, is just bad news. So we want to go easy on those.
No, we don't. Not at all. Why would we want to go easy on the thing that helps us build every single cell in our body's cell walls, the thing from which we get vitamin D, the thing from which we get vitamin K, the thing from which we form testosterone and estrogen, Gil, the thing that makes the myelin sheaths in every neuron in our central and many of our peripheral nervous systems, etc., 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 etc. This demonification of cholesterol is based on nothing more than complete misinformation, and it's completely unacceptable that any person claiming to be a scientist, as this person is, would say so, because there is no support for it anywhere in the literature, except from people who want to state opinions, and opinions are not science.
I used to have this exact same question, and I actually ate meat most of my life, into my 30s. The truth is we don't. We can be very healthy without meat.
Does he look like someone who's very healthy? I don't know. Make your own call. Yeah. Make your own call.
Yeah, and he basically, I asked my wife this question, does he look healthy? And her answer was yes. But I think that what she sees is maybe like that his skin is clear, and that he's not obese. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what she sees. For me, he looks more like a typical vegan, somebody who's not necessarily fat, or is more soft, and he looks like his facial structure is probably affected by it. But although I don't know what he looked like before, but the other thing he
looks androgynized, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does look like he's had some kind of changes like in that direction, or maybe he was really like that all his life, or he didn't really. Maybe he's not very physical. I'm not sure because I don't know.
Sure.
That being said, though, I also would question, because he said into his 30s or up to 30 or something, he was eating meat. Now I wonder how long it's been. Because maybe he's still in those years where he's not feeling the effects of it. Maybe it's only been a few years. Yeah, I would like to know more about that.
In which case he's got more time to go before he starts to really suffer. But he will, like all of them do. Anyway, let's see why he thinks not eating meat is okay for your health, shall we?
Yes.
Or even any animal product. At the same time, if I choose to eat some animal products, that doesn't automatically mean I'm unhealthy. It depends on a number of factors. The type, the amount, the frequency, my genetics, other lifestyle factors, etc.
But he hasn't said anything here that isn't true of any food stuff, has he?
Some people can get away with more than others. That's life.
Yep.
So
But why do we need to get away with animal products?
Good
question.
In fact,
the matter is that the thing here that differs between people vastly, and that's what the issue is that people's ability to get away with eating poisonous plant products that they are not genetically, biologically designed to deal with, people's ability to remain apparently healthy varies greatly. Some people can last years on a vegan diet before they really start to suffer. Some people will start to suffer in the first couple of weeks. There really is a very, very wide range of responses to it. But there's nobody reacting negatively to animal products. So this whole analogy is ridiculous.
It's a choice. Don't let anybody tell you that you need to eat meat, otherwise you'll wither away and you'll crumble to dust.
Well, is he not doing exactly that? And it's not just N equals 1. Look at any of these vegans. Follow them for any period of time. There are only two shapes that vegans come in. Emaciated, skeletal, androgenized, feminized skeletal structures, fine bones, thin hands, thin fingers, caving in face, caving in eye sockets. The only other shape vegans come in is fat as fuck.
And this was one of the issues that I had when he said that don't let anybody tell you you need to eat meat. Yep. That reminded me of how I felt in the past when I was really believing that eating a plant diet was just what must be the most healthy, because it seemed like from what everything I had heard.
The vegans will tell you that you can get all the fat-soluble nutrients you need from plants. That is a lie. It is demonstrably incorrect. You cannot live a long and healthy life without eating animal products. I'm sorry.
The interesting thing about that is that I think that vegans fool themselves, and I think it's sometimes true when people say, meaning they believe that it's true, that they feel great when they're vegan. But I think that that's because they get used to not feeling as good. And I had a couple of different transitions that brought me into the vegan diet. But the first one, when I just eliminated eating meat, and it was a short time, the first thing I noticed is that I started to have like a carpal tunnel-like feeling in my arms.
Yeah.
And I learned from that about B6 and B12, and thought, oh, wow, maybe I'm missing these two things. And that's what was making me feel that way. So I made some adjustments, and over time, I felt better than that, but I didn't, but I think that the whole scope of seeing accurately what the difference was between when I went down and when I went back up again, I couldn't compare that to how I felt before. And I think that a lot of vegans get trapped in that. They make an improvement after they feel worse. Yeah. And then they think that they're as good as they were before, which is not necessarily the truth. So,
well, it's almost entirely untrue, isn't it? Because that's why 84% of vegans quit within 5 years. Yeah.
And so basically, to be really healthy, then it's most likely that we need some amount of meat, if not a lot of meat, right?
I'd say there's no question. You cannot realistically, remotely derive what you need in terms of the fat-soluble nutrients from plant materials. Because you'd have to eat so much plant material to achieve it that it would be impossible.
True.
It's that simple.
I could say more about that, but I might save that for another time. But I've kind of experienced that with eating as much as I could to try and compensate for losing so much weight, and that didn't have a good result either. So
no, it wouldn't on a vegan diet because it's nutrient deficient. God. Okay, so
then your limbs will fall off. There's no science behind that.
Oh, now he wants to talk about where there's no science. That's funny, isn't it? Hilarious.
There's no nutrient in meat that we can't find somewhere else.
Yes, there is.
We'll talk more about risks in a minute, but
like, vitamin A, vitamin E in its bioavailable form, etc., etc., etc. Yeah. There's nothing in meat that you can't find somewhere else.
That is a big question. That was one of the things that I wanted to point out too, because he's going to say it's absolutely a choice. And we do know that B12 is one of the main ones that vegans know about. Yep. But like you said, there's the fat-soluble vitamin A, and then there's different forms of vitamin K.
Yep.
So it's just not true. I mean,
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
To say that there are things in meat to say that there is nothing in meat that you cannot find in plants is an absolute falsehood. It's just a lie. There's just absolutely no way to defend that statement at all from an objective reality. It's crazy. It's unbelievable.
It is absolutely a choice.
No, it isn't a choice to eat meat if you want to be healthy. Sorry. Whether you like that or not, the fact of the matter is we are obligate hyper carnivores, meaning more than 70% of our calories ought to come from animals and not from plants. That's what the N15 data tells us. That's what we've done for the last 350,000 years. For every given individual they have ever tested, it's somewhere between 75 and 100% animal nutrition that individual in their lifetime ate. These are human skeletons throughout the last 350,000 years. The thing that determined the amount of plant material that each individual ate was how close that skeleton was found to the equator. Goodness. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
Right, good. Okay, let's move on.
Protein is everywhere. Every animal food has protein. Every plant has protein. I've made several videos covering protein requirements and amino acids and all this stuff in detail. So unless you're in a very specific situation, like very old person, frail, with impaired appetite, or if you're starving, you're just not getting enough calories.
Like if you're on a vegan diet and you're starving and stuff and you're just not getting enough calories or nutrients and stuff, that sort of thing, Gil.
Unless you're in a very specific class like that, you're getting more protein than you need.
Most people are, yes.
Whether you choose to eat animal products or not. The vast majority of people in our society get more protein than they need. It's just not a concern.
Yep, correct. That's something he's got right.
It's ironic that we're all running around yanking our hair out, worrying about protein. Am I getting enough protein? Where do you get your protein? Truth is, it's one of the nutrients you need to worry the least about. As long as you eat enough calories, you're getting enough protein. It's that simple. Same goes for amino acids, by the way. You don't need to worry about combining any special foods. You can get all the amino acids you need from plants or from animals. Your call.
Not true. Completely untrue.
So that is another question I wanted to bring up. First,
wow, this guy's incredible, Si.
I thought you'd find a lot of good stuff in here to
Jesus
to comment on for sure.
Yeah, not all plants have a full and complete amino acid profile for animals. They have incomplete proteins.
Sense.
You absolutely do need to combine. And to suggest that you don't, need to think about your vegan diet and plan and combine your classes of plants appropriately to make sure you do get a full amino acid profile is completely irresponsible and false.
Okay. And that being said, that makes sense. There's two questions I would ask about that. One is he had also stated that you're definitely getting enough protein. So, so I understand you're saying probably you're getting enough protein then if you're eating enough calories, even if you're not eating animal products. Is that right?
Most likely. Yeah, most likely.
Okay.
Yeah.
But as far as amino acids go, we obviously need to make sure that we get the full spectrum of what we need to build our bodies that we're not making internally. And that being said, you know, some people are saying that you don't have to eat those amino acids at the same time as long as you're getting them over like a cycle, maybe like a week you're getting all of those.
Sure.
Is that also true?
Yeah, you have an amino acid pool basically, which is either replete or otherwise for each of the various required amino acids and stuff. So yeah.
But you just have to be very conscious if you're a vegan that you're getting that full spectrum.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But as I say, that will be the least of your worries most likely as a vegan.
Okay. Good to know.
But to say you can ignore this, don't worry about it, that is completely irresponsible. That's just wrong.
And on that note too, if we're talking about protein, do you think that people who are very athletic on a vegan diet, do they need more protein?
Slightly. Very slightly, yeah.
All right.
Not a huge amount. Okay, let's see what else.
All right.
If you choose to avoid animal products, just make sure you're eating a variety of plants, as unprocessed as possible. Ideally whole plants from all the groups.
Yeah, make sure you get all the toxins in.
Legumes, whole grains, nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables.
Oh, God.
And you're going to get all the protein you need and all the amino acids you need. No need to worry.
Except about all the toxins and pro-inflammatories and heart disease causing things that are in the plants. The things that'll kill you. Oh well.
Same with calcium. You can get it from animal products like dairy, or you can get it from plants. Your call. In fact, some of the richest sources of calcium are plants.
Yeah, but not as bioavailable, and he's going to say it is, and he's completely right. Who cares? You know, I'm yet to see anyone on a carnivore diet show any deficiency of any mineral whatsoever. And that these are people eating nothing but muscle meat, so you don't even need dairy for calcium, actually.
Which is interesting because of how much that's been put into our heads over the years.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a very important point. And yeah, you're right. He is going to say that it's more bioavailable from plants.
It's not.
Maybe
it's not
you
at
speak
all.
about that. for a minute.
No, that's absolute nonsense. He's probably going to talk about the way that the calcium is biochelated differently in animal and plant sources. At the end of the day, we are animals. We biochelate our calcium the same way that the animals we eat does. Of course, the calcium we get from animals is bioavailable to us. To suggest otherwise is just fundamentally, absolutely, utterly ridiculous. The way that calcium is biochelated in plants differs from plant species to plant species. Some are more absorbable, some are less. But, yeah. I don't know where this guy gets his ideas from, because it's not from science.
Things
I
like
don't think there's
kale.
any studies that grains are better than milk, for example.
No, there are not. There are no experimental studies nutritionally on human beings on any topic to speak of. Any aspect of nutrition you can mention, you will struggle to find more than one or two very poorly controlled, very short-term metabolic ward lock-in studies where they've done an interventional experiment on some people. It just it does not exist. The science is not there.
Collard greens, they have more calcium than milk, and it's actually more bioavailable, more absorbable.
No, it isn't.
So if you eat dairy, that's going to give you plenty of calcium.
No, well, dairy isn't actually a great source of calcium if you look into
If you're
it.
somebody who's avoiding animal foods, just make sure you're eating a variety of plants, ideally unprocessed, whole.
The most bioavailable calcium comes from muscle meat, actually.
Interesting.
The fact that there's a lot of calcium in dairy is interesting because the way calcium is chelated in dairy is to a huge protein in bovine dairy, well, in dairy milk, and that huge protein actually makes it very, very difficult for humans to absorb calcium from milk. So the whole calcium in milk is great. Calcium is great, and milk has got a lot of calcium, so milk is great. That whole thing, that's a marketing ploy from the dairy board.
And so muscle meats are more efficient, the calcium that is in muscle meats is more efficiently absorbed by your body.
Yes.
Interesting. That's something that I'm sure a lot of people have not heard of even, just because of what the mainstream preaches, basically.
Yeah, that's the narrative that you've probably heard since before you could walk. You know, that's what these marketing boards do. Let's come up with something that we can get into people's heads that will stay there for generations. Milk has got calcium. We have to have calcium, therefore milk is good. Get it down here. Okay.
Whole plants, and have some leafy greens in there, things like kale, collard greens. You're going to get all the calcium you need.
And a whole shit ton of oxalate too. Look that one up, Gil. You might learn something.
Exact same thing with iron. Surprise, surprise. You can get it from animals.
Now he's going to say heme iron is no better than non-heme iron, is he?
He's going to say something like that, and he's going to say that there's a risk of maybe heart disease and maybe heart attack. And
right. So guess what? Guess what? There is absolutely no science behind what he's going to say there then either. It's absolute spin doctory, crackpottery, and nonsense. There are no experimental studies on human beings which would suggest to us for any reason that heme iron would be hazardous to us. Why the hell would it be?
And would you say that, because I remember in the past, I used to always hear that heme iron was more effective than the iron that we're getting from plants. So is there truth in that side?
Yes, of course there is.
Okay.
Because the iron is biochelated appropriately. It's more absorbable, it's more immediately usable, it's the form of iron that we can actually take advantage of.
And regarding that, where is this? Is it another one of those associations that's the epidemiology that somebody made a statement about this heme iron causing these problems?
Yes. Yep, and you've got differentials in the tenths and hundredths of thousands, completely meaningful to any one individual over 100 years. And it's not causal, it's an association. There is no science to back the claim that heme iron is hazardous to your health in any way. My question to you is, why the hell would it be? What do you think the iron in your body is? It's all heme. So why would adding more heme iron be a problem? For God's sake. This is nothing but spin doctory. It's just ridiculous. Anyway.
Animals or plants, plenty of iron in both.
Yes, but you can't use the iron in plants very well at all. Fact.
Now, there are some things we need to be aware of on each side. People who eat animal products, they should be aware of heme iron.
Yep, because it's the form you need.
About 40% of the iron in red meat, for example, is heme iron. Heme iron is a pro-oxidant that's been linked to a number
No, it hasn't.
of diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and some types of cancer. So just be aware of that.
Nonsense.
And don't lean too...
Notice how he hasn't cited a single study there? Probably because he knows anyone with any skill at looking at those studies, like myself, will pull them to pieces, because there is no difference here. There is no science to support that claim. It's just nonsense. It's just ideologically driven spin doctory to try and fool people who are stupid enough to believe this nonsense, which doesn't make any sense anyway, does it?
too hard on the heme iron rich foods. On the other hand, if you don't eat animal products, you need to be aware of absorption.
Because you won't be able to absorb very much of it, and you'll probably be anemic. Good.
Especially if you're a woman. Women need more iron than men. Iron is in all types of plants, legumes, grains, greens, seeds, chia seeds, and sesame seeds have a ton. Try to have some source of vitamin C with your meals, like fruits or vegetables. It increases absorption of non-heme iron. And avoid tea and coffee during meals.
Yeah, I don't think people should be chasing vitamin C either. I've covered that in depth on my channel as well, if people want to go and look up that one. There's another one that you've been told a whole bunch of lies for your whole life about vitamin C, by the way.
Also, onion and garlic help with absorption of non-heme iron as well. Now, if you're a vegetarian, you should be aware that eggs and dairy are not good sources of iron. So you're actually going to be getting most of your iron from the plant foods. So bottom line, you can get plenty of iron from animal foods or plant foods.
No, you can't.
It's your call. Just be aware on the caveats on each side and play with that.
Just be aware of the actual facts and the actual objective reality, the actual universe that we actually live in over here, Gil. That's what people should be aware of. No, you cannot get adequate iron from plants only for a lifespan. No.
All right, next.
Even if you don't know chords at all, you don't know anything about music theory like me, this is perfect for you.
Bye-bye, Ed.
They can be extremely healthy lifestyles.
No.
We all understand that just because somebody is a vegetarian or a vegan doesn't automatically mean they're healthy. It also
Correct. It means they automatically probably are not going to be at some point. If they're already not suffering, they will be soon enough.
doesn't automatically mean they're deficient in any nutrient.
Yes, it does. A vegan is automatically deficient if they are not supplementing, and probably they're still deficient if they're supplementing, because most supplements, A, don't work, and B, are probably actually contraindicated and dangerous for many reasons, which I've also covered on my channel if people want to go and have a look.
Either. Those are misconceptions. As long as you're eating a variety of unprocessed plants of all groups, you're going easy on the vegan junk food and all that processed stuff, and you're covering some basics like B12. Yes, there can be an extreme...
How are you going to do that as a vegan? How are you going to cover off B12?
Good question, for sure.
You're not. In fact, Si, most people don't realize this. Anyone who says to you, I am vegan, is lying to you, because it's not possible. It's an ideology.
Exposed to bacteria and stuff like that, or
what I mean is, the vegan ideology requires all participants to the ideology, or all people buying into the ideology, to absolutely minimize their harm to animals and not to use any food or product that at all uses animals.
And that being said, that's like the avocados and the almond farming.
There's a couple of examples straight away, yes.
Okay, and
lettuce.
And lettuce,
for example. Basically, any fruit you like, pretty much.
And when you say that, is it because of the bugs that are involved in pollination, or is it because of the fact that they're
any person who fills their plate
those bugs with a result of eating those foods?
Yes, any person who fills their plate with plant foods is directly responsible for vastly more animal death than a person who fills their plate with beef.
Now that I can believe, and I think just to clarify for some people who haven't heard that before, it's about what the one animal could feed a person, as we had talked about before, and considering all of the animal deaths that take place as a result of their ecosystem being disrupted or just killing from farmers and things like that.
People who want a virtue signal and say I'm vegan are actually people who generally don't consume animal products, and as such are doing the so-called vegan diet, the whole food plant-based diet, the diet which is furthest away from the vegan ideal, the vegan ideology to minimize harm to animals. The diet which is furthest away from that is veganism, the vegan diet, the whole food plant-based diet. It's the least vegan thing you can do. So anyone that says to you, I'm a vegan, is lying. They're not a vegan. They're a hypocrite. They're a stinking hypocrite. They're a virtue signaling, probably millennial fuckwit who actually, wants to sit down and do some actual research about anything ever before they open their ignorant mouth about things, frankly.
Extremely healthy lifestyle. No, you're not going to be deficient in any nutrients.
Yes, you will. If you're a vegan, you will be deficient. No two ways about it. Established fact. End of story. Let's move on.
And
God, how does this guy get away with sitting there and just lying through his teeth for nearly 13 minutes? We should go through this later so I can count the number of lies in this video.
you may be at lower risk for some common diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and Alzheimer's, for example.
No, you won't be at lower risk of any of those diseases if you go vegetarian or vegan. That will only increase your risk of all of those diseases.
That's what I was going to ask you. That's more epidemiology, right?
Yep.
That these associations that are small associations.
Yep. Okay. And in actual fact, when you look at the actual mechanisms of what's actually going on inside the human body, and you understand what will happen if you subject that human body to a lack of nutrient for a long period of time, or an insufficient amount of nutrient for a significant period of time, well, we see the results every day, all over the place. All right, let's see what Gil says about B12.
If you don't eat animal products, you need to be aware of B12. Even if you eat animal products, you should still be aware of it. B12 deficiency is surprisingly common, even among people who eat animal products.
As determined how? How do you determine what is a B12 deficiency and what isn't? That's an interesting one to rabbit hole for people to follow as well, by the way.
Especially above a certain age. There's 3 basic sources of B12: animal foods, fortified foods, and supplements. And they're all equally effective.
No, they're not. Absolute nonsense. Goodness me.
One thing is fortified foods are just supplements anyway, right? I mean, you're just having supplements.
Yeah, so there's actually only 2. There are animal foods or there are supplements.
And the supplements, a lot of times, are not even, most of the time, it's something like cyanocobalamin, which I understand is less effective than methylcobalamin.
Yes.
But then, that being said, do these supplements really make a big difference in the actual health status of a person, or is it more hard for them to really get the benefits of the...
There are no adequately controlled studies to inform on that question, Si. There is no science to support it. Like anything else in nutrition.
Okay.
There are people speculating and talking about mechanisms, but there is nobody doing the science to establish cause and effect in human beings under controlled conditions, which is what science requires them to do if they want to talk about cause and effect. Anyway.
They all get you more B12 than you need.
No.
It's a personal choice.
No, it isn't. If you want to have an adequate B12 status, in effect, in reality, physiologically, you must eat animal products. You are an obligate hypercarnivore. There is no choice. You cannot get sufficient B12 physiologically from plant sources or from, these manufacturers. By the way, B12 supplements are not vegan either. Go and find out how those things are made. It'll surprise you. Okay.
I know, if you're watching the headlines, it can seem sometimes like scientists hate meat or they have something personal against it.
No, scientists are not interested in any of that kind of emotional stuff. Gil. One day when you're a scientist, you'll understand that. At the moment, you're not one, and you don't understand that. The only interest a scientist has is the empirical evidence. What does the data say? How was the data collected? Is that data capable of informing on a question I may or may not have? The answer in human nutrition is there is no science to inform. There is only ideas and speculation.
It's nothing personal. Truth is, the majority of scientists eat meat. It's not like they're sitting there
That's because they're humans, and humans are obligate hypercarnivores.
plotting ways to trash animal products.
Well, some of them actually are, aren't they, Si? Some of them are absolutely plotting to try and trash animal products, like coming up with absolute nonsense like NEU5GC and TMAO and all these things that are touted to kill you 3 weeks before yesterday that you'll find in meat and nowhere else. Meat's dangerous, they'll tell you.
That's true. They do tell you that.
Yeah. So, you know, don't sit there and say there's nobody plotting against meat. Of course there are. And they're wrong.
It's just that red flags keep coming up over and over. Cholesterol, saturated
Cholesterol and saturated fat are not red flags. They are only red flags if you are utterly incompetent, Gil.
fat, heme iron.
Heme iron, same thing. Only if you are utterly incompetent and don't know anything about science. Not a red flag.
Talked about those. More recently, something called TMAO.
I've dealt with that on my channel. The video is called TMAO, More Ridiculous Nonsense or something like that. Go and have a look at it. I've completely destroyed that one there. I've also done another video on my Patreon channel at even more depth to absolutely destroy that one. So forget about it. TMAO, not a health concern either. No.
There's many others. So the science just
Like NEU5GC, which I've also dealt with. Another load of absolute codswallop.
keeps revealing new risks associated.
No, it doesn't. There is no research revealing any risks. That is a complete lie. There is no experimental science going on here. Just because you have a pile of paper on your desk doesn't mean you have any scientific data collected using scientific discipline to inform on cause and effect. You don't. Goodness, is this so hard to understand?
With consumption
No,
of
but it
animals.
is what they keep saying.
It is what they keep saying. Look at all our evidence. Look at all our evidence. I am looking at it. I'm looking at it carefully. It doesn't exist. It's a fallacy. You're blowing smoke up people's asses, you veg tarts. No.
Now, it's impossible to tell somebody specific, you can eat these many steaks and these many eggs before it's a problem, and before that, you're totally safe. Science doesn't give us that info because there's
Or any other fucking info.
a fair amount of variability. But what seems consistent is that as the amount and frequency of consumption of animal products rises, the risk of disease also rises.
No, that's not true. That's a complete lie. There is no evidence in support of that statement anywhere. It's ridiculous. Utter lie. Notice how he hasn't cited such evidence. All this evidence says you eat more animal products, your risk of dying goes up. Show me the evidence. No?
And he's going to point to the same kinds of things, right? That
Epidemiology. Yeah, with very, very small effect sizes that are associative and not causal. Goodness.
So that's why nutrition scientists are generally in agreement.
No, they're not. No, they're not, Gil. Number one, because there are no such thing as nutrition scientists. Because science is experimental, interventional, and it's properly controlled. There is none of that in existence. So don't tell me nutritional scientists. They don't exist any more than climate scientists do. They're a fallacy. Okay?
In recommending whole plants.
Nutritional scientists, he just said, are generally agreed in recommending whole plants. No, not true.
So that's just straight false.
That's just false. If you ignore my tirade about the fact that nutritional science doesn't even exist, what he's just said about all nutritional scientists agreeing at large that whole plants are a good idea is not true. No. False.
Now, some people will go all the way and be 100% plant-based, be plant exclusive. Others will have a lot of unprocessed plants and will have some animal products here and there. That's your call. What's important is that you try to get the bulk of your nutrients and the bulk of your calories from whole plants.
Why? You haven't provided any evidence, Gil, that that is so. Neither has anybody else anywhere in the literature. So why would you sit there and say that other than you are an agenda-driven moron who makes his money from misleading people? That's really bad advice, actually.
So generally, these arguments that he's making, I mean, it almost feels like he heard these things himself. He didn't really even look into the science himself, but he's a doctor, so he felt qualified to tell people what the dogma was.
Exactly. He's an arrogant imbecile who thinks he knows more than he does about science, actually. And he's been sucked in by people in white coats who impress him for whatever reason. He's an absolute idiot. He's got nothing of any value to say on any topic regarding human nutrition, clearly, because everything that's come out of his mouth for this entire video has been completely false and completely unsupportable with any kind of evidence or fact or science of any kind. It's just ideologically driven claptrap from start to finish. And it will kill people if they believe his stupid crap. It's disgusting. It needs to stop. There you go. There you go. Not only are they meaningless because they're just associations, they're also meaningless because the level of association is so close to zero as makes no odd. If something is in the tenths and hundreds of thousands, you might as well say zero. Surely.
I hear that for sure.
These clowns don't hear that. Because, I'll tell you why they don't hear it, because it doesn't suit their ideology.
So that podcast I recently did cover this topic as well. We talked about this for like 20 or 30 minutes. Bottom line is the associations are a concern because
no, they're not.
Because they consistently point in the same direction.
No, they don't. They don't point in any direction. 1.0 relative risk is no change. That doesn't have a direction. Tens and hundreds of thousands is not a direction. Forget about it. It's signal to noise ratio. It's meaningless.
And because people have heard this stuff so much, though, and now they're hearing it here from Dr. Gil, again, there's a lot of people that just kind of buy into it. I noticed even as I was, when I was vegan, a lot of people that were around me, eventually they started to say, oh, hey, well, yeah, you're healthy, because they believed because I was eating that way. You know, they had heard it in the media. So the foundation of, where is the foundation that they are, even though it's not a real foundation, I know they have these associative studies, and he's using those for his argument, and then he's eliminating them for anything that's against his argument.
Yes.
But is that the only foundation? Is just that there's some associations that are in these tenths to hundreds of thousands of percent?
Yeah, that's all.
Whatever it is.
Yes.
Is that what the foundation they're building upon is?
That's it. They have nothing else.
Okay.
That's why they keep banging this stuff, because they don't have anything else. And they keep misrepresenting what they do have by saying this is meaningful. No, it isn't. You're lying. Stop lying to the public. You're misleading people. It's leading them to make decisions that will shorten their lifespan, very likely, and almost certainly would reduce the quality of their life in the interim. It's not okay. It's not science. It's not backed by science. This is ideologically driven claptrap.
But the main problem is that all types of science, all types of experiment, both association type and intervention.
There is only one type of experiment, and it's interventional, Gil. Association is not an experiment by definition. It does not have scientific discipline. It does not have control of confounders. It cannot inform on causality. An associative study is just that, a look at what is associated with what else, for whatever reason. Clearly, this man is not a scientist.
Type point in the same general direction.
No, they don't.
So the general picture is pretty clear,
No, it isn't.
Which is why the recommendations are so consistent.
No, the recommendations are so consistent because there is so much money at stake. That's why science progresses one funeral at a time. Because idiots like this clown will continue to lie to you until he retires, dies, or shuts up. I hope it's the later, and I hope it's soon, Gil, because this is absolutely poisonous garbage coming out of your gob. It's just ridiculous. I mean, one statement after another about this, like I said, no, wrong, no, it's just crazy. And he's provided no evidence of anything for the whole video.
to favor fruits and vegetables and legumes and whole grains and go easy on the saturated fat.
No, wrong. Bad idea.
And the cholesterol and
Bad idea again.
the ultra-processed foods.
Yes, avoid ultra-processed foods. Great. There's something we can agree on. Okay, let's not even go there. I think we're done, actually. So we've covered that one, and yeah, I've actually had about enough of this crackpot. So let's just get rid of this. Let's get rid of that.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I understand. Yeah. We did cover that one.
So guys like him really, really get me hot under the collar. Guys like this really piss me off because he's arrogantly sitting there claiming authority and making one statement after another for nearly 13 minutes. Every single thing just about that came out of his gob was completely false, completely unsupportable with science. The man should be embarrassed. The man should shut down his channel. He should stop making videos. He should apologize publicly for misinforming the public on such a grand scale. And he should leave the talking about science to the scientists. Holding a PhD and an MD clearly does not make you a scientist, because Gil has just shown us he is not a scientist's asshole.
And I hear what you're saying. From my perspective, what I would even suggest, and you can tell me what you think about this, but for people who figure out, along the way that they were making a mistake and they were arrogantly giving people the wrong advice, they'd be better off if they wanted to stay in the public eye in some way, to say that they are an experiment and to present from an experimental point of view, maybe even like Vegetable Police, because he obviously isn't going by the science. He's listening to ghosts and things like that, which we know.
He's far less damaging than clowns like Gil, because people take Gil seriously. Some people take that clown seriously.
And that's what I think is the problem, is that he's speaking as if he knows, and really probably just from a dogmatic perspective, that he's either bought into the vegan ideology or, like you said, that he could be outright lying. In his case, my guess is that he just arrogantly wants to believe somehow that this vegan thing is what's good for people, and he hasn't really looked into it.
Basically, he's a bloke whose ego is out of control, his arrogance is out of control, and he's right outside his lane talking about something he has absolutely no training or understanding of whatsoever. Clearly. And he needs to stop doing that.
I 100% hear that.
Hey, that's my take.
Well, I definitely appreciate it. And just for your decision here, there were a couple more questions, but I know we covered quite a bit in those other questions. Do you want me to go ahead and
look, I've got another 5 or 7 minutes before my next thing, so absolutely you can throw a few things at me and I can just sort of quickly knock them over if you like.
Okay, so this was just from a video of his called "What Our Ancestors Ate Doesn't Matter." This is also Gil Carvalho. And it says, not getting enough whole grains is one of the main causes of disease and death worldwide.
Well, that's just absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. It's just like everything else he said today. There's no science in support of that anywhere in existence. That's just ridiculous.
And that makes sense to me, what you're saying, because it seems like it's right along this. It's got to be coming from some association that they supposedly have. That is not necessarily, I mean, even to say that grains are the cause of health, where would that come from even?
Well, nowhere, because there's no experiment to support that anywhere in existence in the literature. It's just nonsense.
I mean, just like everything else that he's...
It's just absolute fallacy. It's just shit he's made up. Or more likely it's shit he's repeating from someone else who's made it up, who's told him, Gil, this is what you need to say to people. And he's gone, oh, okay then.
And that makes sense to me. That's kind of what I think is happening too. And so, and I guess this others just kind of repeat. Yeah, he's just basically saying that all the experts agree with him for the most part.
I think we covered that one. No,
yeah, we covered that.
No.
So yeah, I think that pretty much covers Gil. And I'm not out to destroy Gil, but I do agree with you that he doesn't really.
He's now thoroughly on my radar, and he won't get a moment's rest from me because he's an absolute. He needs to stop. He needs to shut his channel down, and I'm coming after him. Gil, I'm after you, mate, because you need to stop saying what you're saying. It's absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah, maybe he's seeing a video like this and having you come after him. Maybe it'll make him rethink his perspective and even consider that what he's saying might not be true. Maybe he'll learn from it. So.
Maybe what he should do is stick to what he's trained in, and that's being an MD. I don't know what his PhD's in, but it's certainly, you know, even if it is in nutrition, the way he spoke on that video shows me very clearly that he is not a competent scientist. He's not a competent empiricist. He doesn't know how to do statistics or make statistical inference or understand any of it. He is echo chamber repeating stuff he's heard from somebody else. So
it's interesting.
Yeah, that being the case, he should shut up and be a doctor.
Yeah, he'd probably do the most good there for sure.
Yeah, I would think so. Okay, so I do have to race because I have a paid contact hour coming up. So someone who actually wants some advice from someone who actually knows some science. So that'll be good. Helps me pay the bills. Appreciate you being willing to do this. Appreciate that it's your idea. It was a good idea that we do a sort of collective, you know, what we both think about a video. I know I did most of the talking. Next time you can do most of the talking.
Well, you know more what you're talking about when it comes to this kind of stuff. You've read a lot more on this subject.
I guess.
But yeah, I'm happy to do this anytime. It was fun and it was informative, and I appreciate you.
There you go. And there it is. Carnivores and ex-vegans getting along nicely together.
That's right. That's right.
All right, so it's been a pleasure, mate. See you soon.
You too, Bart. Thank you.